After a full 6 years of using and recommending QuickBooks Online, I made the switch to Xero this year. And today I'm going to tell you exactly why I decided to make that switch. So if you're an entrepreneur or small business owner and you're trying to make the decision on what the best accounting and bookkeeping software is for you, then I definitely want you to watch this video. I'm going to break down the key differences, pros and cons of each, and what eventually led me to decide that Xero was going to be my choice going forward. And in this video, I'm also going to tell you what tripped me up when I was trying to make this switch. And later on in this video, I'm going to tell you about one feature in Xero that I didn't think that I was going to care about, but ended up being a total game changer. So if you're looking for more insights like this on tools for your business, definitely make sure to hit that subscribe button. Hi everyone, I'm Jamie Trull, your favorite CPA and financial literacy coach, and this channel is all about bringing you information to help you stay informed, organized, and profitable in your business finances. All right, let's jump in and talk about the differences between these two platforms. And I'm not just talking about the things that show up when you go on their websites and you see the little columns comparing the two different programs. I'm talking about the real differences that you may not know about until you get really deep into the platforms. And I'll tell you that I used QuickBooks Online for many years, so I know that platform pretty well, but I wanted to spend a good amount of time in Xero really getting things set up and utilizing it before I could decide what my go forward platform was going to be. So I've been bookkeeping in both of these systems this entire year. So we're going to dive deep into some of these real differences. Now, first and foremost, user experience and interface. So QuickBooks Online had a really familiar dashboard for a lot of us up until recently, where they changed a lot of things about it. And if you've been using QuickBooks Online for a while, it's probably taking some getting used to click around and figure out where to find the things that you're looking for. Now, personally, I never found the old interface very intuitive. And in playing around a little bit with the new interface, it solved maybe some of those problems, but it still is a lot of clicking around to figure out where you need to go. Now, they have made it a little bit more customizable, which I appreciate, but I still don't find it super easy to navigate. But I will tell you that when I first started really working in Xero this year, it actually felt like a bit of a breath of fresh air. And they just recently came out with a new user interface that's even easier to use. And I don't know if it's just the way that my brain works, but having the main categories all up across the top where there's a really quick drop down and you can find what you need really easily is a game changer. In QuickBooks, I have trouble remembering where exactly the thing I want to do lives. And I have to go through and kind of scroll to see on the million different sidebar categories and subcategories where I need to go and click around in order to find the screen that I'm looking for. But in Xero, everything that I need is neatly put into categories that actually make sense, and it doesn't take a lot of clicking around to figure out where I need to go. And I'm loving their new user interface that really helps you customize what you see and the charts and graphs and the information that you're able to see right when you log into Xero. Now, the second thing that I wanted to talk about was user access and collaboration. And both of these platforms are cloud-based, which means they're really built for that collaboration. You could have multiple users who log in and see the same version of the truth. There's no version control issues like there were with old desktop softwares. Additionally, both of these will allow you to set user permissions so that certain people can only log in and do certain things. So let's say you want to give your accountant access to just be able to pull reports, you can do that. And this type of functionality is a large reason that I'm a big proponent of cloud-based accounting software. A lot of people love their old desktop software, but I really think this is the wave of the future. And yes, that does mean it comes with a subscription fee, but personally, I find that well worth the functionality you get. Now, the biggest difference between these two different platforms when it comes to user access is that in QuickBooks, the amount of users that can access the platform is going to depend on which of the various different levels you have. So the lower levels that come with lower subscription fees are going to have restrictions on the number of users. And to get more users, if you have a lot of people you want to be able to access information, then you're going to need to opt for a higher package. But in Xero, every single package comes with unlimited users. And this is great because now you don't have to pick and choose who gets access to the system. If somebody needs it because they're going to be sending invoices or paying bills, you can give them that access without worrying that it's going to take away from the total number of users that you have or needing to upgrade to that next level. And I think this is really great and smart on Xero's part because different teams are going to be different. And it will also allow you to use more of the great tools that they have within Xero. So for example, maybe your employees just have access because they need to be able to log time to different projects. And then you can give them that access without any concern. Now, moving on to bank feeds and syncing. This is another really important feature of cloud-based software. They're going to be able to sync with your different bank accounts and credit card accounts and pull them directly into the platform. Now, one thing that I love about both QuickBooks Online and Xero is that they have tons of direct bank connections. And the reason that direct connections are really important is because they are going to be less prone to randomly disconnecting. So I think it's great that both of these companies have really focused on increasing the number of direct connections that they offer. Now, I'm going to speak a little bit more anecdotally here from my experience with QuickBooks Online versus with Xero. In my admittedly longer period of time of working with QuickBooks Online, I did run into several scenarios where my banks would get disconnected and I would have to go in and figure out what transactions were missing. And I even made a video on this last year because it was something that so many people ran into. And you can see this was a very popular video. So a lot of people were having this exact same problem. I've also had issues in the past with QuickBooks Online doubling certain transactions and having to go in and mark them as duplicates. Now, on the other hand, Xero has been incredibly reliable in the last 10 months that I've been using it. I have not had any issues with banks disconnecting or double counting or missing transactions. So at least from my anecdotal experience, it seems like the syncing is doing better and is a little bit more reliable in Xero than what I ran into with QuickBooks Online. All right, now moving on to number 4, which is reporting and insights. Now, if you've followed me at all, you know that this is the key reason I think you need to be doing your bookkeeping. Yes, it's important to do bookkeeping for taxes, blah, blah, blah. However, in my opinion, being able to make decisions in your business and have access to real-time data that is accurate and well organized is really the purpose of having these bookkeeping systems and keeping them up to date. There is a treasure trove of information about your business in your financial records. And as business owners, we should be routinely reviewing that and using that information to make better decisions in our business and grow and scale it. And again, here I'll say both systems have incredible reporting. You have access to everything that you need within the system, again, assuming it's been set up correctly to capture the data that you want. But I gotta tell you though, Xero has a new partnership with a company called Sift, and it increases the amount of analytics you can see at the push of a button. Sift even has built-in cash flow projections, which y'all, that is absolutely huge. Most accounting softwares, understandably, are going to focus on the past and getting your data organized, but the fact that there is functionality in here that actually focuses on the future and looking forward is really awesome. And there's no shortage of incredible charts and graphs that you can have access to with one click. Now, when it comes to your general reporting, things like your P&L and balance sheet, obviously both systems are still going to have the ability to pull those and make all kinds of customizations in the way that you want to see that information. So you can run it for different periods, you can compare different classes or tracking categories depending on which system you're using. You can slice and dice your data however you want to see it. But I will say that one thing that took me a little bit of getting used to was the fact that they don't have subcategories in Xero. Now, I was used to using subcategories quite a lot in QuickBooks Online, so this took a little bit of a reframe for me. However, what I found that Xero has instead of those sub-accounts is the ability to really customize your reports in any way you want. And it'll allow me to do some advanced things, let's say, on my P&L, like group or some various different accounts, and be able to save those templates to view them that way later. So it's really kind of a similar functionality to what sub-accounts do, but I actually am finding that I like it a little bit better because there's more flexibility. I can sum different accounts together to see various different ways of looking at my P&L. versus in QuickBooks where I'm kind of stuck with however I set up that chart of accounts to begin with. And as a person who loves to analyze my data in all kinds of different ways, I love that flexibility. All right, now on to category 5, which is an important one, pricing and value. Now, from value perspective, I think both of these programs are awesome if you're using the functionality. That means keeping up with your bookkeeping regularly and using that data to make important decisions in your business. To me, investing in a bookkeeping software is really an investment in your business and your business's potential. And if you're using the information properly, then the ROI is going to be astronomical. Now, QuickBooks has kind of gotten a rap for routinely implementing cost increases. And that may be the reason that you're looking at potential other options. And in general, I have found that Xero is less expensive on the whole than comparable QuickBooks plans, especially because you can add multiple users and you don't have a limit on that. And of course, I've negotiated an even better deal for you. So if anybody wants to start with Xero, make sure you use the link jamietrull.com/Xero. You are going to get a much better deal than you will directly going to the website to sign up. And y'all, I don't want you to pay more money than you need to. All right, going on to number 6, which is support. QuickBooks and Xero really handle support a little bit differently. And I'll admit that took a little bit of getting used to as well. QuickBooks Online offers both phone and chat support, whereas in Xero, you actually have to log a ticket with their support. Now, while I do generally like the convenience of being able to pick up the phone and call a support line, I haven't really been super impressed with the level of support that I've gotten in those instances. And I've also run into pretty long wait times and support that wasn't overly helpful. On the other hand, in my personal experience, I've seen Xero being really responsive to any tickets that I've put in, and I've heard back from them really quickly. And in fact, one time they even called me back to discuss a particular issue that I was running into. So in that way, there is still the ability to talk to a real person on the phone. You just have to go through the process of logging a ticket first. That said, the one thing that I do wish Xero had was a phone line for sales support. I've had people who are trying to make a decision on Xero and have wanted to ask some questions to Xero about their platform, but in order to be able to do that, they have to actually sign up for an account first. And that's because you have to have an account in order to log a ticket. So that is a bit of a drawback. However, I do have a solution. Again, if you sign up with my link, which currently has a deal for 90% off for 6 months, that's always subject to change, so go to the link to see what the deal is today. But if you use that link to sign up, then that's a really low risk way to try out Xero without having to put a lot of money on the line. And now to some other standout features. One of my absolute favorite things in Xero has actually been the tracking categories. Every transaction made in my business gets assigned a tracking category, and I use them to track things like divisions in my business. I love the tracking categories so much that I made an entire video just about how to use them. And here's the kicker, and this was a big thing for me earlier this year with QuickBooks Online. They changed how they handle their tags. So previously, people would use tags for similar types of functionality where you could tag certain transactions and then pull reports for just those types of tagged transactions. So that really allowed you to stratify your data in a similar way that tracking categories does. But this year, QuickBooks Online actually changed tags and made them much harder to use and much more limited, especially if you are on one of the more intro versions of QuickBooks Online. And I think they did this because they're trying to drive more people to QuickBooks Online Plus because that has the built-in class and location tracking. But with Xero, tracking categories are included even in the lowest subscription levels. So why did I switch? At the end of the day, it wasn't just one thing. However, after making lots of videos and recommending QuickBooks Online for a really long time, I started to get questions from you all, the viewers, about alternatives. So last year, I decided to take it really seriously and do some in-depth digging. And part of what I wanted to do was to figure out who various different accounting softwares were best for. Again, if you've followed me, you know that I don't think that one solution is right for every single type of business. It depends on what you need. And for the needs of my business, I found that Xero was a perfect fit. Now, I did research on multiple different accounting softwares, and if you want to see who I recommend each of those for, check out jamietrull.com/accounting, where I even have a decision tree to help you decide what the best solution for you is. Now, after watching all this, you might be thinking, okay, Xero seems really cool, but isn't switching accounting systems a total nightmare? And honestly, that was my worry as well. I used to think you had to start a new system at the start of a new year, or that I'd risk losing all my data, or that it would take forever and there would be tons of issues I'd have to solve. But it turns out that's not true. Now, was it as seamless as just clicking a button? Unfortunately, not, but it was a lot more doable than I first thought. And now I'll tell you that the long-term benefits are absolutely worth it. Now, if you want to see how I actually made the switch, I have a video showing you how to move from QuickBooks to Xero in less than an hour. And in that video, I documented my actual step-by-step process when I really made the move with my own books. Now, like I said, there's not a one-size-fits-all solution for all businesses. But I hope this video helped to give you an idea of what might be a good fit for your business. Now, I'd love for you to leave a comment. Have you used QuickBooks Online? Have you used Xero? What are your thoughts on each? Leave them below. And if you're ready to try out Xero, then definitely use that link that I mentioned. It's also linked down below, jamietrull.com/Xero, for the best deal you can get on Xero. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.